Can you go from knowing nothing about sewing to stitching like a pro in just one weekend? Well, that's exactly what I am trying to do. If we can turn this into a masterpiece or a disaster. Step 1, meet my new bestie. This is my sewing machine. It is a Brother LS30. It is older. It actually has been in my family for quite a while. I just recently picked it up from my dad's house probably a couple of months ago. So I guess not recently, but a couple months ago. And it actually was sitting in my car, in my trunk. And yeah, and then I decided this past weekend that I was going to learn how to sew. Before diving into stitches, I spent some time getting to know my machine and how it works, which I feel like is so vital to this whole process. If you don't learn how a machine works, because every machine works differently, it's going to be really hard. And you will see that in this clip. So what's going on right now? Stop with that, because I feel like something is going on here. I don't know what it is. Hello? Did I run out of thread down there? Is that what it is? As you can see, because I wasn't following any instructions based off of the manual, I didn't know what I was doing, so I got very, very confused, very frustrated, and very lost. So some things that you're going to have to understand is threading the needle, understanding what a bobbin is, which I did not know what a bobbin was, but I do now. From threading the needle to figuring out what all the buttons do, this is the part that felt like the first time driving a car. It's a quick tip. Read the manual. If you are like me and you need a visual, most sewing machines are going to have videos for you on YouTube. That's exactly what I did. Brother has some tutorials. I'm not sure it was like the exact sewing machine, but it was like the basics of a Brother sewing machine. Trust me, that is going to be your new sewing Bible. If not, if you are like me and you need the visuals and it's just faster for you, go to YouTube, type in your machine, and you should find the manual. If you got it from secondhand, that is how you would be able to find the manual. I will say my sewing machine did have a written manual, and that was really helpful, but I also found the videos to be incredibly helpful in learning everything and like visually being able to see it, because I feel like there are so many smaller parts to the sewing machine that it kind of helps to see it visually. I can't speak for other sewing machines and like how their manuals are, how the videos are, but I can say that you will always find a manual online, and you should be able to find a video on YouTube from the company that you have your machine from. Next up, the language of sewing. What's a bobbin? And what's the difference between a seam and a hem? I needed to learn the basics of sewing and all of the terms before being able to actually follow along with the tutorials. I did think that I would be able to just kind of like jump in and like follow along on a tutorial on YouTube, which I'm sure for some it might be possible, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but I definitely needed to learn the terminology, like right sides together, what a bobbin was. I thankfully, whoever used this machine last already had a bobbin that was like already ready to go inside of my machine, which it did have black thread. I did mention that also in the video. I ended up going to Joann's and bought like those packs that come with the bobbins already threaded. As you can see, and I bought a whole bunch that just kind of came in like multiple colors, because a lot of the projects I ended up doing, I needed different colors. And that is kind of like the stitch that goes underneath. You're gonna have to learn what a presser foot is. So that is the foot that you are going to be using when you sew, which is going to hold down your fabric, but also you use different presser feet depending on your project. So for example, this one is a zigzag presser foot. The one that I have on my machine right now, which I'm not going to take it off, I am going to just show you guys as best as I can, is this one is a Singer walking foot. It was able to fit on my machine, so that worked out really great because I didn't really want to wait and order online on like some website that I'm not really aware of. Not that I don't trust them, I totally do, but I needed a walking foot that was just going to be easier for me to use, especially because some of the patterns, as you will see later in other videos that I ended up purchasing, needed a walking foot. Overwhelming at first, as you can see in the videos. I was getting pretty frustrated. I wasn't really understanding what was going on. There were so many different terminologies. As you can see with the bow tutorial, I actually had flipped my my fabric the wrong way, so that's why understanding the terminology of sewing is so vital. So right sides together. So you will see in the video, what I had done was put wrong sides together. And then when I sewed it and then it was time to like flip it inside out, it wasn't done right. So I had to start all over, which was fine because I saw that as just like a learning opportunity for me. And it was frustrating, yes, but I also found it kind of like, oh, okay, well, I at least learned. Like, I learned in that moment what right sides together is. But I will say, it would be easier if you just kind of like, even just watched a few tutorials or a few videos on YouTube where they kind of give you the ins and outs of sewing terminology. I am going to show you a few things here. But obviously that would take like a whole video for me to really explain every aspect, and I don't even fully know every aspect yet. I'm not there yet, but I know that I will be. Next up, to practice, you are going to want to grab some affordable fabrics. I wasn't ready to ruin any of like fancy or more expensive fabrics because I was just learning. So I stuck to cotton and scraps of fabric. I also stuck with like an artificial silk. And I actually used some of my old clothing that I know I don't ever wear. I'm 5'1", so a lot of my clothes are just too long pants wise. So I had a few pants laying around from shorts. I had these like flowy wide leg pants that were more of like a stretchier fabric. I ended up using those as just like a scrap fabric. So you can go to, for us, something local that we have that has pretty affordable fabric is Michael's. They sell these in like these little squares like this. They come like in these little squares and they're about, I don't know, $2. So that's like an affordable route if you wanted to just kind of practice on fabric, because this is not honestly like the best quality. It frays a lot. It's affordable though, and that's the nice thing. And I actually was able to build a really pretty bow from this fabric from Michael's that was $2. And I actually still have some extra fabric for another project, which is really awesome. So my daughter and I got these fabrics and they were $2. You can go to thrift stores and get some fabric from there. You can also get like I said, use old clothes that you know you don't wear or have been sitting in your closet and you don't have a plan for it. Obviously, you don't want to use something fancy because your first projects aren't going to come out perfect, and that's okay because you're learning, and that's honestly the part that is really fun. I found it very fun, very inspiring when I would kind of like mess up or like have like an oops happen where I'd be like, oh my God, like why is this happening? But it felt very inspiring. And so, yeah, I think a way to take the weight off of starting a new hobby of sewing and seeing if you actually have that like real drive for sewing before you invest in a lot of fabric, because fabric can be pricey depending on where you are purchasing or the kinds of fabrics you are purchasing. So yeah, check out your thrift stores. Check out Michael's has smaller amounts of fabric that you can buy that are like, you don't have to buy a whole yard. It's like smaller amounts, $2. And it's okay to mess up. That is why we are starting off with the affordable fabric first. Let's talk mistakes. So I made a lot of them. And actually, quick tip for mistakes, a tool that you should have, everyone should have this. If you are going to start sewing, you need this. This is a seam ripper. And here's another thing, learn how to use it. I know, like, you look at it and you would think, like, of course you would use this side that has like the little red ball, but that honestly wasn't what my mind thought. I went straight in with ripping the seams with the sharper part. Yeah, you use it actually with the red part down underneath your fabric, and then you're going under the seam like that. But you need this. I feel like this is not a tool that is optional, and it's honestly very affordable. Most shops sell it for very affordable that has sewing stuff. A seam ripper became my best friend because, like, for example, as you see in the video with the bow, I did mess up with the directions of my fabric. So I ended up just using my handy seam ripper and restarting, and it worked out fine because, as you can see, you can't even tell that I messed up at all. It's in perfect shape. The fabric is doing well. So yes, a seam ripper, a seam ripper, a seam ripper. Please get a seam ripper if you are planning to do. So next up is finding free or low cost patterns. You can definitely find free ones. My first ever pattern that I used was actually from Rosary Apparel. And she has a bow video because I was actually looking at making bows because my daughter wears bows. I love bows, and I thought it would be really cool to have like a nice solid bow. So I actually followed her tutorial and I downloaded her pattern, which was for free. I will link her video so that you can actually check her tutorial out and get the free pattern. And this is the bow. I love it. It's really pretty. It's very sturdy, which I love because I feel like a lot of bows that we get in the stores are a lot more floppy, and that might be that might be your preference, but for me, I do really love this like sturdy, full-on bow. Another pattern, actually it wasn't a pattern I followed, but it was a tutorial on YouTube that I followed, which was how to make scrunchies. So for the bow, I put the bow on my scrunchie, or on my daughter's scrunchie that I had made. I made this out of these pants that I just, like I said, I too short, just didn't fit me anymore. They never fit me. They were just too long, and I didn't want to wear them anymore, and they were actually starting to rip. But I ended up hand sewing the bow on to the scrunchie, and I made this scrunchie, which was really easy, super simple. And I know some people might say, like, just start off by doing whatever it is that you are into, but I actually think if you wear scrunchies, start off with scrunchies because they're small, and it kind of, from what I learned, was that doing the scrunchie taught me about how to kind of like, because when you do the scrunchie, you do this pull, and that method can actually really help you later on when you are trying to do other projects. So I actually think learning how to do a scrunchie is really helpful. And if you are someone who wears scrunchie, then it's actually like 2-in-1. Like, you're learning the process of sewing, you're learning the process of like how to do the like pulling, but then like sewing, then pulling, then sewing, is a really great process to learn. And then you get a nice cute scrunchie. I have some more upstairs that I had made, but I will have to show pictures of those because I don't have them with me right now. I had actually made a scrunchie with this material because it's just like gentler on the hair. But yeah, I think actually starting off with scrunchies and things that are a little bit smaller for me was really helpful. So I started off with the bow, scrunchies. My daughter wanted me to make some pillows for her dolls. So she had picked out like a fleece fabric from Joanne, so I made her some little pillows. Here's the thing, perfection isn't the goal, improvement is. So, like, for example, with the bow, I know I'm using the bow as an example a lot, but I have it handy at the moment. One side, and you might not even notice this, but I'm noticing it because I do struggle a lot with perfectionism. And this whole journey of learning how to sew has actually really tamed that perfectionism of it needs to be perfect, it needs to be perfect. I need to know how to do sewing like right away, and it needs to be like that I understand every single pattern and all of that. And that just wasn't the case, and that's fine. I feel like I embraced the flaws. They are part of your journey. And you have to just embrace it. I think the more that you look at those mistakes and you think, oh my gosh, like, duh, like that totally makes sense. Like, and you learned something. And I feel like that feels a lot more inspiring than feeling like, oh, it needs to be perfect and why didn't I get it right? To me, this bow looks perfect. I'm sure to most you can't even tell. But one side is slightly bigger because of the way that I kind of like folded it, and yeah, and that's okay. But yes, embrace the flaws of your journey because it'll keep you inspired. After one weekend of trial and error, I went from clueless to, well, slightly less clueless. We ended up making more projects. As you can see, I made this really cute doggy sweater, which honestly is really good. There are obviously some parts that are kind of like questionable, but I feel like for a weekend of learning sewing, it's pretty good. Scrunchies, sweaters, bows. I made my daughter a pair of Bratz pants from the pattern. I will show that here. And this is just the beginning. I am just getting started, and if I can do it, so can you. In the next video, I am going to be making my dream pajama dress. I already started cutting out the pattern, as you can see here, so if you would like to see me cutting and getting this dress all assembled and ready for me to wear to bed, then please come and check out the next video. What is your dream sewing project? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you are someone who is a pro at sewing, or you know a lot more in the aspect of like domestic sewing, not like the industrial, I think industrial is really great, and I would love to be in a position to like do a lot more and make a lot more. One of my next goals is actually to get a serger, so that I can kind of get more professional results from my stuff. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any tips, if you have tricks, if you have some hacks for me. I'm happy to hear any of your comments, and I would love for you to tell me what your dream sewing project is. Yeah, I can't wait to hear from you guys in the comments, and thank you for coming to my channel. I will see you guys in the next one, where we will make my dream pajama dress. And yeah, have a good one. Bye.